by the lead Democratic prosecutor, Congressman Adam Schiff. After that, Chief Justice John Roberts was sworn in as the presiding judge for the trial. He then asked the nation's senators to solemnly swear to do impartial justice according to the Constitution and laws. The senators replied, "I do," in unison, then signed the impeachment oath. The trial will start on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Before that, the House must deliver trial briefs, laying out arguments to the Senate by 5 p.m. tomorrow. White House counsel must deliver their trial briefs by noon on Monday. If the House wishes to file a rebuttal brief, it must be handed over by noon on Tuesday. At the White House yesterday, President Trump was asked about the upcoming impeachment trial and once again described his phone call with the president of Ukraine, an issue at the center of his impeachment, as perfect.
Well, I think it should go very quickly. It's a hoax. It's a hoax. Everybody knows that. It's a complete hoax. The whole thing with Ukraine.
According to the New York Times, President Trump capped his day by meeting with several campaign aides and grilling them on how voters were receiving impeachment. While speaking with advisors yesterday, Trump once again repeated that he couldn't believe he was facing such a predicament as impeachment. The Times notes that Trump said he wanted people to be prepared for a motion to dismiss and has hoped for one, even though Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has signaled that it won't happen. Willie?
Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Hans Nichols. He is at the White House where the president spoke yesterday. Hans, good morning. So we hear the public posture of the president that this is all a hoax. The phone call was perfect. He's not concerned. But what is he reading right now, and what is he really thinking as he sees the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court being sworn in to oversee a historic impeachment trial? I note that the president was praising Senator Lamar Alexander on Twitter yesterday, one of the Republicans who's been viewed as perhaps one who might swing over to at least vote to include witnesses in this trial, if not to convict the president.
Look, the White House, the president, they're making last-minute adjustments. For all the talk and the prelude we've had to impeachment, it doesn't seem like they've settled on their strategy, and that's really on two fronts. Number one, it's not really clear what the full suite of the defense team is going to look like, right? The plan had always been as soon as the House announces managers, the White House would put forward their team. They haven't done that in a definitive way. And, guys, when there's a delay, there's typically a dispute. And the other big question the president is pondering this morning is, should he get on Air Force One and go to Davos on Monday? Because yesterday when you listened to him, he was clearly hedging. He was saying, well, probably I'll go. And then later on, he seemed to say, well, I've got all these meetings. But the reason why that's important is because there's a conversation inside the White House on whether or not you want the president in the country, close to his Twitter feed, close to his phone, or do you want him abroad trying, and the stress on trying to look presidential. And the one challenge they're having is that it's one thing if he had, say, a NATO summit in Brussels or he's meeting with a foreign leader in Asia, but Davos has a different sort of tenor, right? This is where the global elites get together. And so that's what they're weighing at the White House this morning, what to do with the defense team and whether or not the president should get on the plane. As always with the Trump administration, I suspect we'll get an audible from the president. And I didn't say audible because we've got the LSU Tigers coming here later today. But we do have a little college football sports here, guys, too, as well. Guys.
All right, Hans Nichols, thank you so much. It was great seeing you the other day in the office. We hope to see you again very soon. Have a great weekend. Michael Steele, You hear Donald Trump, and he's talking to himself when he talks about a perfect phone call. No, really, and he says it's a hoax because what he's facing now isn't even what he was facing with Mueller. There was more of a split when it came to what the American public believed. But he said it's a hoax and nobody can believe this is happening and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet over 70% of Americans want a full and fair trial. They don't want Moscow Mitch and Lindsey Graham to shut things down. Over 70% want to hear from witnesses. That's 7 in 10 Americans. They want to know the truth. That's all they want to know. They want to know the truth. That's it. But also, think about this. Over 50%, a majority of Americans think he deserved to be impeached. Again, he says it's a hoax. Nobody can believe this. No, he's talking to himself. A majority believes he should be impeached. We remember that Fox poll and some other polls that show a majority believe he should be removed from office for that phone call and the things that he did around that as well. So this is a problem with the Republicans not being able to put together a defense of Donald Trump. He lives in a separate universe from the rest of them factually, and he's disconnected from the reality of this political crisis.
Well, I think that's an essential part of this narrative that a lot of folks, certainly in Republican circles, talk about in a rather hushed tones because, of course, you know, the president is the grand master planner here. After all, this is his strategy. What you're seeing is his strategy. He didn't want a war room during the House impeachment trial. He did not want to set up the internal structure that would reinforce messaging, that would actually design a message and then reinforce it to the public. So what happened was, particularly when Nancy Pelosi decided, you know what, I'm just going to sit on these impeachment articles. We'll just put them over here on the table for a little bit. It threw the whole game to another level. And it allowed a number of things to happen despite the gnashing of teeth around it. That strategy actually proved to be smart because it solidified the interest and the desire among Americans to want to know more and hear more, particularly as more information was coming out. Without a counter narrative outside of this is a hoax put forward by the president, there was no effort really to put in place what you would need to have going into this trial next week. And that's why they're sitting at the White House right now. Do we go to Davos? Do we stay here? What do we say? What do we do? Because there's no internal structure. This is the president's strategy from the gut. And the politics of this does not necessarily work out well with him, particularly with the revelations from Parnev and others.
Well, the revelations, Heidi Przybyla, I just wonder how this impacts this whole issue about witnesses. And, I mean, I don't know how some of these Republican senators could not want to hear from witnesses when every day there's incredible news backing up this story.
Well, you heard about Susan Collins. Susan Collins is now talking about wanting to hear witnesses probably. Martha McSally embarrassed herself yesterday, and the people of Arizona trying to raise money by attacking a reporter who really is down the middle and has been attacked by Democrats.
So the bottom line is, it appears, and who knows which way it could go, we have to keep an open mind, but this information's coming out. Whether we hear it from witnesses in the trial or whether it comes out in a different form, I mean, how do these senators not want to hear testimony?
You know, Mika, I was trying to speak with some of these senators and calling around to their offices yesterday, and I was instructed to look at a video that was tweeted out by Lamar Alexander. You mentioned him earlier, retiring senator who has great bipartisan respect and who is taking a very close look at this himself. He said he's potentially open to witnesses. You mentioned how the president was tweeting. I'm just looking at the president's Twitter feed, not once, but twice, maybe even suggesting that he might give a gold medal to a Tennessee service member. This is the group that we should be watching, perhaps even more so than these vulnerable Republicans, Mika and Joe. And, you know, some of the dynamics in the chamber, I think, were really instructive yesterday about who they're targeting yesterday. I was sitting up watching as this was all taking place, as the articles were read and the senators took their oaths. And what you saw was two groups, really. First, it was Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins, who, after everyone dispersed, Senator McConnell's floor managers made a beeline for them and were consulting with them. And then you saw Senator Mitch McConnell talking up Pat Roberts. That's a name that you haven't really heard very much about, but this is, again, fitting into that group of retiring GOP senators who are truly, unlike some of these House members who voted against all of this, really may be instructive here because they are leaving Congress. They actually are retiring. And I think that they are going to be watching all of this very closely. And there's a lot to happen yet over the next 2 weeks. Yesterday, they were saying they hadn't actually read the Lev Parnas materials, where they're going to have several days to look over that now, come back and think about it. And even if these vulnerable Republicans don't vote for witnesses because they're worried about their primaries, those retiring Republicans have a lot to think about right now.